work is really just a way to earn money. And if you can figure out a way to earn money and where you're enjoying yourself, or and you don't have to go work for someone else, then I think it's a pretty valuable option.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's show on Wealth Strategy Secrets. Today we're joined by Pete Reese. Pete is the president of Reelvest Properties, a land development and investment company. With nearly 2 decades of real estate experience as a broker and investor, Pete has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate for profit over the years for himself and on behalf of his clients. He did $3.5 million in revenue in 2022 with his land flipping and development business, and he's pushing to do $10 million in 2023. Pete's always looking for his next deal, including his longtime dream of his own private island. Besides his professional accomplishments, Pete is a proud father to 3 beautiful girls, keeps up with his family by working out and enjoying a vegan diet, and is the 31st great-grandson of King Henry II. Pete, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Dave. I appreciate it, and I appreciate that intro.
Yeah, you bet. And we're going to have to just start right there and unpack that intro for a second. So first of all, love it. A dream to have your own private island. That's absolutely awesome. That's Richard Branson level Necker Island. So tell us how, what was the inspiration for that? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Richard Branson, and I think I've always had that stuck in my head that would be kind of like the coolest ultimate thing to kind of have your own piece of the world, and it's kind of like your own, it's an island in more ways than one. It's actually an island, but you're kind of off by yourself, and you can kind of create all the rules there and everything, which I always thought would be pretty cool. So I'm not looking for some island that's on a river somewhere or something, but maybe in the Caribbean. I think that would be a nice spot. Maybe I'll have to use my land skills in order to try to acquire one day.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I love it because we talk a lot around wealth strategy, right? The first step is actually creating your vision, because if you don't have a target, you're going to miss every time. So creating that vision is so important. And that's certainly a huge vision. So really love that. And also have to just ask about this. I mean, what a cool fact here that you're actually the 31st great-grandson of King Henry II.
Yeah, well, I think I am. I found this out on Ancestry.com. Actually, my daughter did. They give you those clues after you upload your DNA and everything. So they give you those clues to keep tracing your ancestry back, and it just kept going, went all the way back to him. And there's some other people, before him that were kings of different countries and things like that. So I just thought it was pretty cool. I have no way to verify any of that, but I thought it would be pretty cool to put in my bio just to get people talking. So I threatened my wife that I was going to put in my Instagram bio, but she said it wouldn't be a good idea.
I think it's a super fun fact, and there's a lot to learn from history. My last name is Wolcott, and actually Oliver Wolcott was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
That's awesome.
So we actually named our son. One of our sons is named after him, so he's an Oliver. But it's the lineage and history is really cool, and if you can kind of pass on some of those traditions, I think that's all part of building a legacy right around your family, Your values and virtues. So Pete, tell us a little bit about how did you get into real estate space, and and then ultimately into land.
Yeah, I've been in real estate for quite some time, or since the early 2000s. My wife and I were actually flipping homes way back then. And, we just watched some shows on HGTV, and we thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. We could do that ourselves. So we started getting into it, and it was going very, very well. I got my real estate, my broker's license out here in California in 2006 because I was getting all my deals on the market. I was just working out deals with MLS listed properties. And I did it just to kind of get better access to deals and maybe save that buyer's commission. That would help the numbers work a little bit better. But then when the market crashed here in 2007, 2008, it kind of came in handy because at that time, it was the foreclosures. That was what was happening and what was selling. And I thought, well, I can position myself to these banks as being a listing broker for these properties, an REO listing broker. And that's what I did for 2-3 years. That was kind of my whole focus, was just doing that. And that was a good business at the time. There was a lot of transactions happening, and I was thankful to be able to have that in a time where a lot of people in real estate were struggling. So that was good, but it's not the best business to be in. There's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of emotions and things that are not the best. So that did lead me to a bunch of great connections with larger companies that were buying up foreclosure properties and just either holding them or flipping them. So for a while after that, I just sort of focused on finding them deals, and they would buy as many deals as I could bring them that fit their criteria. So that was kind of fun for me. I wasn't doing any sort of investing myself after the market crashed. I guess I was gun shy. That's the time I should have been buying up properties, but instead I was doing the opposite, but live and learn. So then that kind of led me to, after a while, I got a little bit burnout on just dealing with clients and things on the that side of things, and then started up a business with my wife, online education business related to blogging and travel blogging. So she had an established travel blog and blog at that time, and tons of people asking her how to do it. So we created a whole business around that, showing other people how to do that. That was really successful and had a really good run. We just kind of lost a little bit in interest in that. And I knew I needed to get back into real estate investing, and I just didn't know what model to choose. And then was doing some reading and research online, and I stumbled into some stuff about people who were doing land flipping. Saw anecdotes of people buying a property for $10,000, selling it for $30,000, in a couple months. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I like to buy and sell stuff, and I like that profit percentage. So, I just kind of, I bought a course on it, and I went all in, learned how to do the business model, and learned how to evaluate land. And then in 2021 March of 2021 was when I flipped our first piece of land. And that just kind of started a whole chain reaction of things. So that first year did about 1.2 million and some change at about 50% gross profit margin. And, this was a partial year. And then 2022 did about 3.5 and just shy of 50% gross profit margin. And then 2023 looking to do 10 million. So trying to scale it as high as I can.
Wow, that's really awesome. I love the ingenuity and innovation, right, in this space as being an entrepreneur, being an investor. You get to be so creative with these types of things, and how you were able to kind of put the pieces together and make it work for you. Before we jump into some of the nuts and bolts, can you just share with the audience a little bit? We like to talk a lot about, wealth strategy, and if you have, certain portfolio allocation and coming from real estate, and now that you have land, is everything in land, or do you have a particular wealth strategy that you're following today?
Yeah, I guess my wealth strategy is I've got my land flipping business, which is the cash generator. It's the short term, cash type business. I mean, these holds are generally, 60 to 90 days. So everything's moving quickly. There's no real tax advantages to doing any of those types of deals, no depreciation, no long-term capital gains or anything like that, but, or no 1031s. We don't do any of that stuff with this, but it does allow me to then, it does generate a considerable amount of profits. And then we've been buying rental properties and different, commercial type properties to use for accelerated depreciation to offset that income. So that's kind of how we're canceling it out. And kind of the overall wealth strategy is just generate as much cash as we can in this business, and then funnel that other money into longer term holds or longer term, maybe value add plays in some way, but they're going to be long-term investments. So that's kind of the main strategy.
Yeah, no, that's a great strategy. And are you buying like commercial real estate local to you or in syndications or?
Anywhere. We haven't done any syndications or anything. I mean, we bought a motel in Wisconsin. It's not really a motel. It's a collection of mini cabins, 18 mini cabins. So that's a project that we're working on. Bought some other units and things in North Carolina, and just always kind of looking, that's, I guess, the good part about this is that, we're making profits, but the bad part is we're kind of feeling under the gun that we've got to buy a certain amount of properties, each year, or we're going to be paying a lot in taxes. So it's a good problem to have. I can't complain about that.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. But do you have any systems in place, or is your wife helping you with manage some of these properties because they're not local to you, and you have to have an active role in them?
Yeah. At this point, I had a project manager on our team. It didn't quite work out. So looking for a new project manager that's going to help me, manage these properties. But for right now, it falls on me, and my wife helps out a lot with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about the land flipping. Can you walk us through like an end-to-end example? Because I think this is probably new to a lot of listeners on, how it actually works.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a pretty simple business in a way. We generate all of our deals with direct mail. So we send out actual letters to the people in the mail. First of all, to back up before that, we actually build a list, and we pull a list from, DataTree or PropStream, one of these services that collect data. And we're just doing a basic filter. We're looking for vacant land, and we're looking for a certain property size. Generally, we're looking in most of these areas we're dealing with, we're looking at properties that are 10 acres and above. So we're looking at those basic filters, and we've got some other things that we filter out as well. But we're building a list, and then we look at average acreage value, average price per acre in each of these areas that we're mailing. So we might take a particular county, and we'll look at the comps, and we'll say, okay, average retail price per acre is $10,000 an acre, and then we back off a percentage from that, and then we generate an offer price per acre basically in those type of areas. So we send out actual offers. So the first page it's a 2-page letter. First page is kind of like who we are, why we're contacting them, what we can do for them. Second page is an actual purchase agreement with an offer amount on there, their parcel number, the acreage, and some real basic terms. And some people respond and say, and are really angry at me that I offered a low amount for their property in their eyes. Some people are interested and sign the offer and mail it back to me. Some people call up and are interested in selling, but they want a better price or something like that. So when they respond, that's where we really dig into the, looking into their property individually and seeing if we could work out a deal. So we do that. We buy these properties off market, directly from these sellers. As soon as we get a contract signed, we go through a whole due diligence process. We send out a photographer. We get broker opinions. We have a whole list of due diligence things, a bunch of calls and things like that we make on these properties to try to determine if it's a buildable property or what it is that we're getting, and make sure there are no red flags on that property. We also run every deal through an attorney, title company, escrow company, depending on the state. So there's that title search, and sometimes things come up in that title search that sometimes can be corrected, sometimes they can't. But we just make sure that any of the properties that we're buying are insurable, and we get the title insurance on those. And then after we close on them, we've been closing on them with our own cash. And then after we close on them, we then go ahead and list it with a local agent or land agent or broker and try to sell it as quickly as we can. And sometimes we do some minor value add stuff to these properties, and sometimes we don't. Just depends on what that particular property is. But
wow. And you're getting a 50% margin on those flips?
Yeah. Our goal is always to double our money on the deals that we do. So buy a property for $50,000, sell it for $100,000. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but that's kind of the benchmark that we try to shoot for.
Yeah.
But on average, we're probably, our average deal last year, we made $23,000 profit on each deal. So it's just, and we're constantly trying to do bigger and bigger deals. It's, to get that figure up, but
sure.
But,
and on the
overall,
acquisition side, are you focusing on particular markets? Do you have a kind of a sweet spot or niche that you're going after?
Yeah, we've been really focusing. last year especially, and a portion of this year, really focused on the East Coast, kind of like New York down to Florida, kind of all the states in there. But we really want to expand to a bunch of different markets. How it kind of works in this business, how it's worked for us, is that we'll test a certain market, send some mail there, see if we get any momentum, any deals in that particular area. And then we try to build the team and the infrastructure around there. And if we can find good people to work with, specifically land broker, agent, and title company and things like that. If we can find good pieces to kind of help us in those particular areas, then we try to do more and more business in those areas and kind of, really start. It's almost like a little satellite operation in all these little areas. So we're trying to expand into as many different little areas as we can. And, we've been expanding westward. So I've done deals in random other places, Washington State and California and kind of all over. But the East Coast has been our focus to this point. But I'm not solely limited there. I'll do a deal anywhere.
Yeah, interesting. And can you tell us a little bit some more around the metrics, right? Does it take, for instance, 100 offers before, you actually get one accepted? What are you seeing, or 20, or what is it? What is the uptake typically?
Yeah, the main metric that I look at is the cost per deal, mail cost per deal.
Okay.
So it's been averaging about $3,000 per deal, which for the volume of mail that I'm sending, it's about 6,000 letters for one deal. So, the other, metrics I know that some people look at are call response rate and things like that, but that really is difficult to kind of quantify because so much of it depends on the amount that we put on an offer. Like if I offer a certain percentage, like a higher price on these properties, I'll get a great response rate. I won't get as many deals, but I'll get a higher response rate. So I just kind of look at the end of the road, like what is the important metric, and it's cost per deal. So, if it costs me $3,000 to generate one deal, on an average, we're making $23,000 per deal, then it's a pretty good return on investment. So
yeah, no brainer. And what about from a time perspective, right? I mean, how much time is involved in doing this?
Well, there's a lot of different things that go into it. It just depends on what kind of scale you're doing. At the level we're trying to go to, I've got a bunch of staff built up that kind of do a lot of these different pieces of the business for me. When I first started, it was me and an assistant that I had that I brought over from another business, and I was doing pretty much everything. And then sort of the administrative type tasks, I would sort of offload to him one by one. And then I started hiring for specific roles. At this point, I got a pretty big team. I've got 2 acquisition managers that are doing all the communication with the sellers that call in or email in or text in, whatever the case may be. And then I've got a head of acquisitions, and he kind of looks at all of these deals that come in, determines value, determines if we want to buy the property or not. Then I've got a transaction manager, and she handles all the transactions on the buy side. And then when we resell it, communicating with the attorneys, title companies, all that kind of stuff that goes into it. I've got a list manager. I've got someone that is a lead and due diligence manager that enters everything into our CRM and then also orders all the due diligence once we get a property under contract. And then I've got an executive assistant. So I've got a lot of different people helping me out at this point. And at this point, I'm kind of just approving deals. I'm kind of trying to improve processes within our business and, putting out fires and solving problems and things like that. But eventually I want to hire someone to take over that role for me. And so then I can just kind of think and work big picture. But it's possible to do as a side hustle type thing. It's just, not sending out 100,000 letters a month like we're doing right now.
Yeah, that was exactly where I was going with this, Pete, right? Because we have a lot of investors out there that might be, W-2, right? And, they have decent W-2 positions, but they're looking to increase, capital, free cash flow to be able to invest in different opportunities and continue to scale. And this sounds like a really intriguing way to be able to do this is like a side hustle.
Yeah,
what
very
would you
lucrative
what would
side
you
hustle
think?
too.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that you can do. Like if you're setting it up that way, first of all, I have a phone service that basically they answer the phone for us 24 hours a day. I don't have anyone on my staff to do that. I hire that portion out, and then
Hmm.
they send an email with the lead information. Then I have my acquisition managers call them back. But if you were going to do it as a side hustle or something, you would just cherry pick the ones that you want to call back that would be good potential deals, call them back, email them back, whatever the case may be, and then work out those deals. And then you can bit piece certain add-ons where you don't have to have a member of your staff, like have a full-time staff member doing them. Like a transaction manager can be a transactional type thing that you hire, as needed on transactions. I would definitely recommend, as soon as you're able, to hire an assistant, that you can, train, maybe from overseas or something to keep the costs down. And, you can train them to do sort of those administrative type tasks that are very repetitive, and that would free up a lot of time. But I know a lot of people that do it as a side hustle, and, they're very happy to do a deal a month or, something like that. And that can be like very, very life changing, to be do an extra deal a month. You're making, 10, 20 grand on that deal. I mean, that's, it doesn't take too long before people are starting to really wonder, like, if they want to stay in their W-2 job or not, even if it's very high paying.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great. And so do you actually offer some kind of training or program to help people do that now?
Yeah. So I've got a website. It's called turningprofit.com, where every month I do a monthly income report where I break down everything that happens in our business, basically the revenue in our business, the profit, each and every deal that we did that month, like what we bought it for, what we sold it for, the profit on that deal, notes on that deal, how many days we held it for, everything. I try to be as transparent as I can. And the goal with that is to kind of show people what's possible in this business. And, so if it is interesting to them, then they could kind of see if it's something that might align with their skill sets. And then I started up this community, a land flipping community, where we've got people that want to learn how to flip land. And I've got a bunch of experienced land investors in there doing over $1 million a year, and a lot of people collaborating, funding deals, like all kinds of stuff. It's been really, really cool to see it grow. So I've been putting a lot of effort into trying to build that community. And I'm actually working on a training program that'll probably be released in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Been doing everything I can to make it as good as I possibly can. And that's being released for free in the community. So I don't have anything to sell at this point, but at some point I'll probably do some sort of mentorship program if people are interested. But at this point, I'm just trying to put out as much value as I can. And, if some people find it valuable and able to do some deals, that would make me pretty happy. And plus, I want to be able to partner with my students as well, so I'd love to be able to train people how to do this. And then they find the deals, I'll fund the deal for them, and then we split the profits. So,
Yeah.
So I think
that's really awesome, Pete. I think, being in a group of like-minded people, right, and always learning, always not being the smartest person in the room is really key to growing. But, I think this is really an awesome side hustle. And, there's so many opportunities, right? As much as there's so much craziness in the world going on right now, it's also one of just the best times to be alive. Right. I mean,
I agree.
The ability to start a business, from your house, even if you're 16 years old, nowadays it's really staggering. So I think it's really thought provoking for people to kind of, listen to this idea and look at your scale. I mean, how fast you are able to scale is really impressive. And then, if you can create some kind of side hustle, it could certainly, create an additional revenue stream for you, right? Which is always good, right? Having that alternative revenue stream, but it also could actually be a gateway for you into entrepreneurship, right? To leaving that W-2 and really focusing on your strengths.
Yep. I've got, kind of one example of that, which I think could be maybe interesting to people. I've got 3 daughters, 2 of them, 23, 20 are my 2 oldest ones. And they saw what I was doing with the land flipping, and they kind of took an interest with them. They, we have them as employees of our company. So we have them doing some, some tests and things. So I had them doing, evaluating properties for me and things at one point. So they're very, very like interested in the business. And they said, well, Dad, can we start doing some deals too? And I said, well, why not? I think that would be a great thing. So they had about $8,000 that they had started with that they pulled together, and they had a corporation form that they were going to do a different business with, but that never took off. But so they had the entity form. They had $8,000 that they pulled together. And what I did was a couple of the, smaller deals and things that were not going to be very impactful for me. I thought, I was like, well, I'll just let them have it if they want to do it and kind of try their hand at this. So to make a long story short, over the course of a little over a year, they parlayed that 8,000 into 84,000 and, about 6 deals, I believe it was. And they learned how to do the whole process, and, it's very lucrative for them. They live with us still, so they don't have a lot of expenses, and they just were able to keep that money and just keep it rolling. So.
That is so awesome, Pete. I love to hear those stories. Mine are in my 20s as well. And, we have household masterminds, and we have since they were in high school. And it's so great to be able to take all of these learnings that it took us, so many decades to figure out all of this stuff, and to be able to pass this on to our kids is just so powerful, so that they can think differently, for themselves. They can be independent, because a lot of this also, right, is around autonomy. Right. If you can learn at that age that, you can create your own, capital and income at that point, well, maybe I don't necessarily need to take this W-2 path. Right. That's maybe not necessarily for me. Right. And it's just
it's a different world these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I always talk about that. Like, I think a lot of people are kind of, like thinking about things the way they used to be instead of what they are right now and what they're going to be in the future. And really, when you think about it, work is really just a way to earn money. And if you can figure out a way to earn money and where you're enjoying yourself, and you don't have to go work for someone else, then, I think that's a pretty valuable option. So,
yeah, for sure. It's really a system, right? I mean, they're trying to, put us into a system from grade school. Right. That's really kind of archaic. Right. And it's been around forever. Yep. But, now if you have, that ability to really not have someone, telling you what to do, where to be, and you're learning, skills like, critical thinking, problem solving, right, creating value, you understand those kind of skills. These are the kind of skills is what, people need in the future. So really great to see that, you pass that on to your kids, and, we share the same philosophy on that front. Yeah. So Pete, what do you think, clearly, you've accomplished a lot. I know it looks like health is your passion, which is one of our passions as well, around, being holistic in terms of building your wealth. But from a personal development perspective, what's the one practice that has yielded the biggest results for you?
Consistency and persistency, I guess, but mainly the consistency part of it. I'm a very regimented guy, and I didn't used to be that way when I was younger. I picked it up over time, and I kind of realized that whenever I could be super regimented about something that's important to me, that great things will follow. And now I've built my life in a way that I'm super regimented about everything, to the point where my wife makes fun of me that I'm too regimented and too rigid on some of these things, which maybe she's got a point. But, I wake up the same time every day. I go work out at the same time every day, eat the same stuff every day for the most part. So I'm very into time blocking and things like really controlling my schedule. So all these things, and the consistency of it is really where the key is. It's easy to just kind of start something and do it for a couple of days and then move on to something else, but you're never going to get great results that way. You have to really consistently do the same thing over and over again to get those results. I don't know if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits, but it's a very it's a great book about that concept. And it just, you got to put the habits in place in order to achieve those goals. It's not like just setting a goal and somehow hoping it's going to happen. It's about putting those actual steps into place, and the consistency that I've been able to put into my daily routines and everything like that has helped me achieve a lot, and hopefully will allow me to achieve a lot more in the future.
Yeah, such a great point. And I think really, when you think about the process of, wealth building, it's just that, right? It's a process, but unfortunately we're kind of trained to think that it might be a product or an event. Like I might win the lottery, I might exit a business for 8 figures or something. But when you can create that consistency and focus on the process, the outcome will come, but it's so important to lay that groundwork and have that done. I share with you, if you haven't heard of the Kolbe test before, but a lot of our listeners, we have talked about this before, and it's something that measures actually your instinctual wiring, and how you think, and in 4 different domains. And the second one is called follow through, which is like how systematized of a thinker you are. So, for you and I can guarantee you're very high on that one. That's my highest one as well. And that's why when I think about wealth, like I'm trying to put this entire process into, something that's repeatable, right? And it's a system, right, of how you can build wealth. So just like you do that. But it's interesting. You should take a look at it. And also, if the listeners haven't heard it, it's Kolbe, KOLBE.com. And, we've had our whole family do this as well. And it's so cool because you can find out people's strengths versus their, where they're not so good at certain areas. And then you can build so much more harmony on your team, in your household with, how you think, right? Because it's more natural to you.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate it. I've heard of that, but I've never dug into that at all. So I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah. It's a really good concept. Pete, if you could give just one piece of advice to listeners about how they could accelerate their wealth trajectory, what would that be?
Yeah, get really, really good at one specific niche within real estate. Since we're talking about real estate and wealth building associated with that, like if you get really, really good in one area, like become an expert, read everything you can, watch as many videos as you can, listen to as many podcasts as you can about that particular subject. Don't get caught in the shiny object syndrome where you're kind of chasing all these different things. Find one model, someone's already figured out how to do it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Learn everything you can about that, and then just repeat it over and over again. It's not rocket science at all. It's just, you do have to get really good in one area though, in order to get some of those returns. But
awesome. And if people want to reach out to you, Pete, and learn more, can you tell us about those links again so we can make sure they're in the show notes for everyone?
Sure. So turningprofit.com, that's our website where I've got all those income reports on there. And that's the name of our podcast that we have as well, where we talk about real estate investing and land flipping, which our podcast is on all the podcast platforms. Just search Turning Profit. You can also find it on YouTube, and we've got a bunch of other videos on YouTube. And then our land community, our land flipping community, if you just go to landconquest.com, you'll see buttons on there that you can join the community, and then that's where you'll get access to the free training that I'm releasing in there. And so I also do a Zoom call normally once a week. I've got one later today, 2 hours about each call, and basically all I'm doing is evaluating properties. People submit their deals that they're working on, and I just go through them live on my screen, show how I evaluate deals, what I think it's worth. And people, I think, find that pretty valuable, because that's really how I learned the business, like how I learned to evaluate properties, seeing someone else do that. So I figured it would be pretty valuable to kind of pass that on. So.
Yeah, awesome. I love that ethos as well, is really what's in it for them, and trying to create value for others the whole time. So Pete, thanks for coming on the show today and creating so much value for the audience. I think this was really insightful, and definitely worth looking at, especially if you're considering, a side hustle, or you've been thinking about getting into entrepreneurship. This could be like a really nice niche to get into.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it.
You bet, Pete. Thanks.